I'm holding a photocopy of a patent filed in 1936 by a Canadian engineer named Charles Nelson Pogue. The device he describes is a carburetor, but not any carburetor you've ever seen. According to the document, his design could deliver somewhere between 200 and 250 miles per gallon on a standard gasoline engine. That number was published, that patent was granted, and then, according to people who followed this story for decades, the device quietly disappeared. Now, before we go any further, let me be honest with you about what the evidence actually shows, because this story has two completely different versions, and you deserve to hear both of them clearly before you decide what to believe. The first version is the one that's circulated in backyard garages, rural workshops, and yes, Amish communities in Ohio and Pennsylvania for nearly 90 years. It goes like this. Fuel doesn't need to be liquid to burn, it needs to be vapor. And if you vaporize gasoline completely before it enters the combustion chamber, instead of spraying fine droplets the way modern injectors and conventional carburetors do, you could theoretically extract far more energy from every gallon. The math, at a basic level, supports the concept. Complete combustion is always more efficient than partial combustion. Every combustion engineer in the world agrees on that. The second version is what mainstream combustion physics and every major automotive engineer will tell you. And here's the thing. Their argument is also compelling. Pay attention to this part, because this is where the debate gets genuinely interesting. Modern fuel injection systems already vaporize fuel almost completely. Port injection atomizes gasoline into particles measured in microns. Direct injection does it inside the cylinder under extreme pressure. The gap between what modern systems do and what the Pogue carburetor supposedly did is far narrower than the legend suggests. And when independent testers have actually tried to replicate the high mileage carburetor claims over the years, and some of them have rigorously, the results have never come close to matching the legend. Not once. The 200 mpg number has never survived a controlled test. So why does the idea keep coming back? Why do people in rural communities, off-grid homesteaders, and old car enthusiasts keep talking about vapor induction, heated fuel lines, and what some call the Amish vapor method? That's the question worth actually investigating. Here's the thing. There's a kernel of real engineering inside this folklore, and for anyone driving an older carbureted vehicle, something from the 1970s, 1980s, or early 1990s, that kernel is worth actual money, not 50% less fuel, but potentially 10, 12, maybe 15% better efficiency on a vehicle that's currently running rich, poorly timed, or leaking vacuum. And a length of vacuum hose costs about $3. Let me explain what's actually happening under the hood of an old car that's hemorrhaging fuel, and then we'll come back to the vapor debate with clear eyes. Older carbureted engines rely on a choke plate, a butterfly valve at the top of the carburetor throat that restricts airflow on a cold start to richen the mixture. On a warm engine, that choke should be wide open. On a lot of old cars, it's not. The thermostatic spring that controls it weakens over decades. The choke stick's slightly closed, and when that happens, you're running rich. Too much fuel, not enough air, every single time the engine is warm. You might not smell it clearly through the firewall, but stand behind an old car at idle that's running rich, and you'll catch it. That faintly sweet, almost syrupy exhaust smell that most people just associate with old vehicles. That's unburned fuel leaving your tailpipe. That's money leaving your tailpipe. A properly adjusted choke on a vintage carbureted engine can recover meaningful fuel economy on its own. The adjustment takes 20 minutes, a screwdriver, and $0. Now, vacuum leaks. This is where the $3 fix enters the picture for real. Think of your engine's intake manifold as a sealed chamber under negative pressure when the engine is running. Fuel delivery in older systems is calibrated around that vacuum. A small crack in a vacuum line, one of those brittle rubber hoses that's been baking under the hood since 1988, creates an unmetered air leak. The engine management system on a modern car can compensate for that. A carburetor cannot. The carburetor sees lean conditions and tries to compensate by dumping more fuel. Meanwhile, the vacuum leak is undermining the fuel trim at the same time. The engine runs rough, hesitates, and drinks more fuel than it should. Walk into any auto parts store and ask for a length of $3 16-inch vacuum hose. It costs roughly $3 for a foot. That single piece of rubber has fixed fuel economy problems on old vehicles that owners had been living with for years. If your vintage car has a rough idle that smooths out when the engine warms up, but never fully settles, vacuum leaks are worth investigating before you spend money on anything else. Here's how you find them. Start the engine cold. With the engine idling, spray a small amount of carburetor cleaner around each vacuum line junction, around the base of the carburetor, around the intake manifold gasket. If the idle speed changes when the spray hits a spot, air is leaking there. You found it. Mark it, order the hose, replace it this weekend, that's it. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where the vapor legend and real engineering actually overlap in a way that's worth taking seriously. Gasoline must vaporize to burn. That is not folk wisdom, that is chemistry. Liquid gasoline sitting in a cylinder doesn't combust well. It combusts partially, incompletely, with carbon deposits as the byproduct. The entire goal of carburetor and injector design is to present fuel to the combustion chamber in the smallest possible droplets, distributed as evenly as possible so that vaporization happens fast and combustion is complete. On a cold engine, that process is compromised. Fuel condenses on cold intake walls. The mixture reaching the cylinders is uneven. Combustion is incomplete. This is why cold start fuel trims run rich on every gasoline engine ever built. You're compensating for poor vaporization with excess fuel. Some of it burns, some of it doesn't. The people who built and promoted heated intake manifold systems, vapor induction experiments, and yes, some of the techniques that have circulated in Amish communities where older vehicles are maintained out of necessity rather than nostalgia, were not entirely wrong about the underlying physics. Warmer fuel vaporizes more readily. A heated intake charge, delivered at the right temperature, can improve combustion efficiency on an old engine that's running cold and rich. Wait until you hear what actually comes out of this when you look at the data. The EPA and SAE have documented intake air temperature effects on carburetor performance going back to the 1960s. Exhaust heat riser systems, those cast iron passages in the intake manifold of millions of old American V8 engines that route hot exhaust gases under the carburetor base during warm-up, exist precisely because engineers understood that warming the incoming charge improved cold start vaporization and reduced incomplete combustion. When those heat risers crack or the control valves seize open or closed, fuel economy and drivability both suffer. If you have an older V8 with a heat riser valve that's stuck, and on any high mileage pre-1990 engine, there's a reasonable chance it is, freeing that valve or replacing it if it's seized beyond recovery is a legitimate fuel economy improvement backed by the same principle the Vapor Legend is built on. Not 200 miles per gallon, but measurable. Here's what the other side of this debate gets right, and it's important. Combustion engineers will point out, correctly, that the energy content of a gallon of gasoline is fixed. You cannot extract 50% more energy from a fuel just by vaporizing it more completely because the energy limitation isn't combustion efficiency alone. It's the thermodynamic efficiency of the entire engine cycle. The theoretical maximum efficiency of a spark ignition gasoline engine under ideal conditions, something called the Otto cycle, is bounded by the compression ratio and the heat rejection through the cooling system. You cannot build a carburetor that overcomes the laws of thermodynamics. That's why the 200 mpg carburetor has never been demonstrated under controlled conditions. Not because it was suppressed, because physics doesn't allow it. But here's the honest acknowledgement worth making. Engines running in poor tune on old carbureted systems can be so far from their designed efficiency that bringing them back to spec produces gains that feel dramatic to the owner. If your 1979 pickup was getting 10 miles per gallon because the choke was stuck, the timing was 3 degrees off, the air filter was clogged, and 2 vacuum hoses were cracked, and then you fixed all 4 of those things in one afternoon, you might go to 15 miles per gallon. That's a 50% improvement. And if someone told you the fix involved fuel vaporization and a piece of rubber hose that cost $3, they would not technically be lying. That's the real story inside the legend. Let that sink in for a second. The buried part of this isn't a corporate conspiracy. It's the slow burial of basic maintenance knowledge that happened as carbureted engines disappeared from showrooms, mechanic training shifted to fuel injection and OBD systems, and an entire generation of technicians who knew old car tuning by feel retired or moved on. The knowledge didn't get suppressed, it got orphaned. And now it circulates in communities that still use older vehicles by choice or necessity, Amish settlements, rural homesteads, vintage car hobbyists, as a body of practical know-how that's gotten mixed up with the legend over decades of retelling. So what should you actually do if you're driving an older carbureted vehicle and you believe it's drinking more fuel than it should? If your engine is a pre-1990 carbureted unit with over 100,000 miles, start with the basics before spending money on anything exotic. Check your air filter first. A clogged air filter on a carbureted engine richens the mixture across the entire operating range. If the filter is dark gray or black rather than light tan, it's restricting airflow and costing you fuel every mile you drive. That's a $12 fix. If the air filter is clean and you're still running rough or rich, check the choke operation on a warm engine. With the engine fully warmed up and at idle, look down the carburetor throat. The choke plate should be standing nearly vertical, fully open. If it's at any angle other than parallel to the airflow, you may have a sticking choke. A shot of carburetor cleaner on the choke shaft and plate, working it by hand with the engine off, will sometimes free it. If not, the thermostatic spring likely needs replacement. Then check vacuum lines, all of them. That length of 3/16 vacuum hose you picked up for $3 will replace the 2 or 3 lines most likely to have cracked. Do it on a Sunday morning. The whole job takes an hour. After that, ignition timing. On a distributor-equipped engine, timing drift is common after 30 or 40 years. A timing light costs $20 at any auto parts store. The correct base timing for your engine is typically on a sticker under the hood or in the factory service manual. Running 4 degrees retarded from spec can cost you measurable fuel economy and power. Running 4 degrees too advanced can cause detonation. Both conditions can feel like a carburetor problem when they're actually a timing problem. These are not exotic modifications. They're maintenance items that have been standard practice since carburetors were invented. And when an older engine that's been running rough comes back to spec, the change in fuel consumption can feel remarkable. Not because you've discovered a suppressed technology, but because you've returned a worn-out system to the state it was designed to run in. The vapor principle is real. The physics behind it is real. The specific claim of 200 miles per gallon from a device that can be installed in an afternoon is not supported by any evidence that has survived independent scrutiny. But the practical application of that principle, keeping an old engine in proper tune so that fuel vaporizes and combusts as completely as the design intended, is worth your time and your $3. This next part matters, especially if you've already tried the basic tune-up steps and you're still not satisfied with fuel economy. There's one more area worth investigating on hot days specifically, and that's vapor loss from the fuel system itself. On warm climate driving above 85 degrees, a faulty gas cap seal on an older vehicle can allow fuel vapor to escape through the evap vent system rather than recirculate back into the intake. A new gas cap costs around $8. If your old car has a noticeably strong fuel smell in the cabin or outside after a hot day park, and you can't find a visible leak, the evap canister, the charcoal canister, usually mounted near the firewall, may be saturated or disconnected. A working EVAP system on a carbureted vehicle recaptures fuel vapor that would otherwise be lost. On hot days, that recapture can represent a measurable fraction of your fuel economy. Check that the hose from the carburetor float bowl vent runs to the charcoal canister and not into open air. On old cars that have been worked on by multiple owners over the decades, it's surprisingly common to find that hose disconnected, plugged, or rerouted incorrectly by someone who didn't know what it was for. You'll know the evap canister is saturated if you smell fuel vapor strongly near the front of the vehicle on a hot day, even with the engine off. That smell, sharp, gasoline forward, almost like standing near a fuel pump, means you're losing vapors to atmosphere rather than recovering them. A replacement canister typically runs between $15 and $30. This is old car chemistry that predates the legend, underlies the legend, and is fully in your hands to address right now. I know this cuts against the story some of you came here hoping to hear, the idea that there's a hidden technology, a suppressed device, a secret the oil companies buried. The truth is more complicated and, I'd argue, more empowering than that. The knowledge that keeps old engines running efficiently has never been hidden. It's been in service manuals, on the stickers under your hood, and in the hands of mechanics who worked on these vehicles when they were new. What got lost was the widespread practice of applying it. If this made you rethink how you're maintaining your older vehicle, share it with someone who's been chasing a rough idle or a fuel economy problem they can't explain. And if your experience with old car tuning is different from what I've described here, if you've seen something work that the textbook says shouldn't, drop it in the comments. Those conversations are worth having. Subscribe if you want more investigations like this, where we take the legend seriously enough to actually test it against what the evidence shows. That's the standard this story deserves, and so do you.